We will talk a little bit about how we are planning to implement all of these things that we've been talking about, and how evaluation could look like in practice. Um, that's not working. Okay. Yeah. So we already talked about this all day, I would say. But just to reiterate, AI is everywhere in the legal field now, not just in the legal field, it's everywhere. Um, and but using AI in a unchecked way can have really serious issues. And for example, Maria mentioned that before. There was recently a high court case that I think a lot of people are familiar with, where half of the case law citations were hallucinated. They just were made up by the AI. And what that highlights is that AI can produce these things that look like they're real things, but they seem really convincing, and it takes some time even for people to realize that they're not right, but they're ultimately not right. And how can we more reliably assess whether an AI model is actually producing safe, accurate, and legally trustworthy content? And why, I guess a lot of you will be aware why this matters, but let me go over some points. First of all, it erodes trust, right? If you are found as a legal person to have used AI in an unethical or in a way that misrepresents anything really, then people will trust you less, right? Because they feel like, well, this person hasn't really done their job right. But in more concrete terms, it can lead to losing a case or a case being reopened, as it was the case with the person who used AI to produce their documents for court that were later found to be AI generated. Or you could even be fined for wasted cost orders. I think the penalty, Serene had found this information, about £2,000, or even worse, you can face criminal-like sanctions like contempt in court, which in the worst case could lead to a prison sentence. And the last point is, if companies realize there's all of these risks and something might have happened with AI, they might just say, okay, we have to be safe, so we're just not going to use AI at all, which also would be bad in the sense that you're losing a massive opportunity and chance to use a technology that can be extremely helpful and free up time for legal practitioners to focus on the thing that they're really good at. With AI being used a lot more, we talked about this multiple times. Like, it's at some point it doesn't become feasible, especially if you like strip for resources, that everything will be checked super thoroughly by a human. Oh, yes, sorry. So what is already happening, what we see happening, is that people generate something by AI and realize, okay, that looks good enough, and just go on with it without necessarily checking it. So we are thinking about how can we make sure, how can we give people more confidence that the way that they use AI is actually doing, that the AI is actually doing the things that they want them to do, and that they're aware of potential pitfalls. And we propose an automated evaluation approach. It's a pipeline that's designed to rigorously test how an AI model performs on specific legal tasks. And it's not just about verifying facts, it's about making like the invisible visible. So it's about not just giving you a value, but also really giving you an understanding of what the AI does. And we want to make sure that people feel that they understand what the potential pitfalls are, what the shortcomings are, and very important that it also relates to their real life requirements, so that it's not just some metric that performs well on the leaderboard, as Rob has said earlier, but something that actually relates to the things that the people want to use AI for. And the way that we want to do this, I think Jenny will take over from here, right?
Yes. It's fun. Two speakers. Okay. Hope I'm not blocking the TV. So yes, as Sebastian said, central to what you'll see in the demo and our approach to evaluation is the need to drive evaluation by real life needs. And this is done by bringing together the experience and requirements of legal practitioners with the technical aspects and expertise used in natural language processing to evaluate models, like Sebastian said, in a way that is aligned to whether or not models are actually fit for purpose in everyday AI applications. So this process relies on an interconnected set of concepts, which is a wall of text, but we'll go through it step by step in the coming slides. So here we created a formalized table that shows the connections and the flow between the different concepts, from goals to requirements and tasks, from tasks to aspects and metrics. So let's go through this very quickly. In a nutshell, goals refer to what a user aims to achieve through using the technology, in this case, LLM-driven systems, and requirements refer to the criteria of success for the use of the technology. So for instance, one might want to introduce AI or explore the adoption of LLM-based systems in order to reduce administrative burden in an organization. They might also want to use it to improve accessibility and outreach, so on and so forth. There could be many reasons why one would consider bringing AI into the workflows. So let's, for the sake of this presentation, focus on reducing administrative burden as an example. In order for this goal to be met, it's required that whatever is being automated should be done well. There should be actual time saved if that is the goal. And the solution should also be cost effective. And again, there could be other criteria that relate to this goal. So next, tasks refer to concrete processes and implementations that we can use to evaluate whether or not a model can actually meet the goals and requirements. For example, let's say we're interested in using the LLM to summarize court cases. And here then, where available, we would select a summarization task that actually involves court cases as the data, so that when we evaluate, what we evaluate the model on is actually similar to what the model will actually be used for in practice. Next, there are different aspects and metrics. So aspects are the dimensions of the model output to assess, and metrics are more, I guess, concrete ways to put a number to the quality of the output on each aspect. So it's important that you can see there's a list of aspects here. They're not exhaustive, but it's important that evaluation covers a variety of aspects, because often a single score doesn't tell us very much about the quality of an LLM output. For instance, since we're talking about summaries here, LLM could generate summaries that are very, let's say, clear and concise and written in appropriate language, but it can contain factual inaccuracies. Or an LLM might generate summaries that are extremely well written, maybe completely factual, and yet they provide correct citations to the source of the information, making it difficult for practitioners to check where the information comes from. So based on how you would want to apply the AI, again, you would care about different aspects, and these aspects are then evaluated with metrics from, well, in this case, natural language processing. And by capturing goals and requirements and ways to measure success in the standardized format, we can approach evaluation in a rigorous, holistic, and standardized way that more closely addresses the complexities of real-world LLM applications. And so some of the key differences between, I guess, what you'll see in the demo and what we're presenting in terms of evaluation and existing ones are, I'd say, along two dimensions. One is in terms of tooling, and the other one is in terms of how evaluation is conceptualized. So let's start with tooling. There's some examples shown on the slide here, but essentially there's a lot of open source and proprietary solutions already out there. But while they exist, they share some limitations. So most prominently, the majority of current tools require programming expertise and specialized NLP knowledge. So people should already come in knowing, which are the specific data sets, which are the appropriate metrics, when in fact, such information might not be, I guess, widely available among expert practitioners. They also tend to focus on simple single document scenarios, when in fact, if I'm a user interacting with an LLM, it often spans interactions. I might be talking to, let's say, Claude or ChatGPT about a document or multiple documents, and we might chat about this over a long period of time. So that is not captured by a lot of the current tools that are available. Also, the evaluations often do not account for domain-specific needs and workflows, and there's also no clear connection between technical NLP metrics and actual user requirements. So in short, a lot of these current tools, while they exist, they're targeted towards engineers and NLP researchers. And this means it's a bit more difficult to be interpreted by people outside this field. And so again, to rehash, what this means is that there's now a disconnect between evaluation and application, making it difficult for organizations and users to see, first of all, whether or not LLMs are actually fit for purpose, and second, to understand and communicate the evaluation results with each other, with stakeholders, and for key decision makers. So next, now that we've talked a bit about tooling, we're going to talk about, I guess, conceptualization of evaluation. And this is going to cover some of the points that already mentioned this morning in Rob's presentation and in the Q&A. Excuse me. So many people rely on evaluation benchmarks, which are collections of data sets, often with known problems and solutions. And current benchmarks are, useful, particularly in academic context, but they suffer from some limitations. So some of them are listed here, but, oh, thank you. Yep, some of them are listed here. One of them is that a lot of them are prohibitively slow and expensive to run. This is particularly the case for larger benchmarks, such as Helm, where it's meant to be a generalist evaluation of LLM rather than evaluating LLM for specific applications. And this is particularly problematic if, let's say, you're a smaller organization or you're budget constrained and you can't, call all of the possible LLMs out there on all of the data sets available. You have to be a bit selective in how you evaluate. Second, the benchmarks are susceptible to issues including contamination, saturation, and gaming. So this includes cases where models inadvertently cheat during evaluation because they've encountered the data or different versions of the data some point during training, and cases of, in terms of gaming, of people inadvertently developing models to perform well on benchmarks in order to place a bit higher on shiny leaderboards without actually considering how well they perform in practice. And this leads to, again, this problem of disconnection. The data used in benchmarks themselves are often also sometimes a bit problematic. There are clear issues with mislabeled data in known large benchmarks, for instance, across varied fields, but there's also issues with the task design. So for instance, there's a lot of the current academic benchmarks rely on multiple choice question answering, but just because an LLM is able to answer multiple choice questions about, let's say, legal problems from an exam, doesn't mean they're actually good at reviewing contracts or summarizing court cases. So again, there's this problem of ecological validity and construct validity that makes the results of these evaluations a bit less useful than we would like them to be. And finally, in terms of what we can do with the evaluation as well, benchmarks, static benchmarks often generally provide, let's say, oh, you get an accuracy score of 90%. Well, what does that actually mean, right? Aggregate numbers, such as mean accuracy, but also other aggregated metrics, don't really tell us about where models fail, why they fail, nor do they provide practical insights on whether models are fit for purpose or how, as developers and teams working with developers, you could actually improve these systems so that they address these shortcomings. So what this means is that because of these limitations with benchmarking practices, evaluation is currently often outpaced by development and deployment. So models and, I guess, LLM-driven solutions are not adequately tested before they're put into practice. And also, the results can be disconnected from what really matters to users and stakeholders. And we aim to solve that or adjust that.
Is it me? Okay. Oh, you got some water on your laptop.
Maria's
No, I was talking to Maria. Okay, so thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I think Jenny already here. We want to have a more holistic, multi-aspect evaluation that follows best practices. A standardized comparison between models, but also a flexible way of setting this platform up so people can adjust it to their own needs and their own requirements. Because ultimately what matters is that these evaluations are anchored in the requirements of real life scenarios, right? Like, because you want to evaluate AI in a way that ensures that you know that it will do the things that you want it to do and not perform really good on some arbitrary benchmark. And the way that we envision this is to have a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So there could be a scenario where let's say you want to summarize court cases. You might not know how to do that. Like, what are the kind of metrics? What are the aspects? You then might benefit from someone having already done that and then following that kind of evaluation. So that's what we mean by top down. There's a portfolio of evaluation bundles that you can choose from and then see how your particular model performs, or like performs on that task. Or you didn't do a bottom-up approach where you feel maybe more confident. Either you feel more confident in building your own evaluation bundle, or you feel like none of the existing evaluation bundles really capture the thing that you're trying to do. So the way that we envision is that we would guide you towards building this evaluation bundle and then being able to apply that to your task. I think we're running a bit over, so there's some like nice technical diagrams. This is kind of how we imagine it: the top down on the left, where you browse use cases and then go all the way down to actually evaluating it or adding your own data set. Or maybe sometimes you just want to have a look what other people have done to get an idea about how these things are being evaluated. And then on the right side, the bottom-up approach, where you build your own evaluation bundle, which would then ultimately feed into, it's a way of envisioning it, feed into the portfolio that exists, so other people might benefit from the work as well. So this is like a relatively simple schematic of how that could look like. Something that we find really important, and I think you will agree, is that we have a secure compute environment. So one problem is, as multiple people have said today, gaming benchmarks, people kind of training or using models in a way with the sole purpose of being top of a leaderboard, and then these benchmarks slowly becoming kind of meaningless in a way. So this is not about being the best necessarily. This is about evaluating whether the things do what you want them to do. Like, I keep repeating myself, but I think that's really the focus on it. So we envision that all of this happens in a secure compute environment where your data is safe, where the benchmarks don't deteriorate, and ultimately that the results will then be displayed in a user interface that is outside of this environment. But everything, the evaluation and the computation of the task, happens in a secure environment. And yeah, quickly, just, it's maybe a bit technical, but we imagine that each evaluation bundle consists of these little components that can be rearranged and rebundled into other evaluation bundles. This is what we mean by being flexible, but by having standardized ways of doing these kind of things so you can be flexible. Kind of want to go through maybe something a bit more tangible that Serene has helped us to put together. Thank you. So we imagine a like somewhat fictional scenario, and well, you can come talk to us later if you think this is something that is realistic. We do hope it's realistic. Imagine that at the Supreme Court, there's like a head of IT and the head of a judicial assistance. They're discussing the need to free up time for the judicial assistants in a cost-effective way. And they know that the judicial assistants already use a tool to analyze and create press summaries. But they also know they have these requirements and needs that these summaries have to comply with. And these would be the people who talk about this. So we would have like a technical person and we have a more law-focused person who would have this conversation. And ultimately, we imagine that this person here would kind of call the shots on how will we evaluate, how do we make sure that what our judicial assistants use is actually doing the right thing. And the thing that Jenny has said before with the table where we go from requirements to metrics, the way we imagine is that there needs to be a conversation. Everyone needs to be in the loop, right? Legal professionals need to be in the loop. IT people need to be in the loop. It's not that one person can decide all of this. This is like a very multidisciplinary approach. And we thought about some requirements that would apply in this case, which is, first of all, you want to reduce the routine drafting workload, but you want to preserve legal accuracy. Citations need to be correct. You need to follow the structure and style, which depending on where you are, it might differ between the US and the UK or like other countries. Maintain exact fidelity to the operative outcome, uphold anonymity, produce outputs in reasonable plain English. These are some of the requirements that we imagine or that we know people will have when producing summaries. I do want to show you what we imagine this tool to look like. We have implemented it. It's online. I just don't really know how to get to the browser. Maybe we can go through this, and then if we have a question answer later, I can pull it up and we can play around with it a little bit if you're interested. But this is a prototype. This is like the beginning of our implementation journey, and really, it would be really great to get feedback from you, what you think is good about it, what is useful, what maybe isn't useful, how you could imagine, or if you could imagine this being used in your specific field, or like what parts of it might be useful. I will quickly want to walk. So this is a summarization task for Supreme Court cases. It's from an open source data set. And the first difference that you might notice if you have seen some other benchmarks before, that we don't just report a number. We have 4 metrics here that correlate with the requirements that that I have just talked about, like factual consistency. Are the summaries consistent with something that a lawyer would do? Are they coherent? Are there no hallucinations? And are they readable, plain English? And we don't just want to report values. You don't just want to report a mean value. We want to like kind of give you a bigger overview of how individual documents perform, because I think something you can see is interesting here is that this model in the middle performs better than DeepSeek, but there's then these weird outliers, right? Which you wouldn't really know about these if you just get a number. But what this kind of setup allows you is to get a much deeper insight in understanding what is happening. Also, you can see, oh, it just has 2. It used to have more arrows. Oh, I think there's some slides missing. It's not that important. Also showing like, oh, maybe it performs really good in this metric and then it performs really poorly in another metric, right? To get a feeling of like, how does it go wrong? Where does it go wrong? What does a summary look like that is specifically good? What does a summary look like that is bad? And also you see on the side here, we even broke down the metric factual consistency to a sentence level. So you can exactly see what are the kind of sentences within this summary that are problematic. I don't know, there's something wrong with the slides. I'm so sorry about this. I put out this example here where it says the driver should be dispensed with, but then in the gold summary, so like the reference that has been produced by an actual lawyer, it says it would not be appropriate to dispense with this service. So it's kind of contradicting itself. And not exactly sure where this is coming from, but this is something that you would capture, and it's something that you wouldn't see if you just see a value. Also, something I find interesting is sometimes LLMs, there was some copyright issues with this model that we used, where they sometimes said, I can't do this because of copyright things. And, or sometimes LLMs just do things that are unexpected. And again, you wouldn't really see that if you just looked at a mean value, but you can see here that this specific sentence, this outlier got captured by all of our metrics saying like, hey, this may be something you have to be aware of. this model performs pretty good. It even performs best at not hallucinating. But there is a chance that while this model is really good, that maybe sometimes it produces something bad, which would not be captured if you just looked at a mean value.